U.S. President Donald Trump is yet to come to terms with the victory of former Vice President Joe Biden in the U.S. presidential election, and is actually pushing ahead with plans to contest the outcome of that election in court. While he's at it, however, the president-elect is busying himself with laying out the necessary framework for dealing with COVID-19, the most exigent of America's problems at the moment. The people are also talking about Kamala Harris, the California senator who will be vice president when she, alongside Mr. Biden, are inaugurated on January the 20th, 2021. The sheer historical significance of her run for the presidency, nomination as vice presidential candidate, and now journeying into the immediate future as vice president of the United States and most probably the future of the Democratic Party, has added another layer to the conversation on race relations and recognition of women as a real-time political force in America. Arise London correspondent Afia Adam will be joining us for an update on this unfolding story.
Moving things along, we'll be engaging Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, a good governance consultant and executive director, Development Specs Academy, Abuja, Nigeria, who'll be looking at what Nigerian politicians and leaders must have learned from the American election experience. And finally, Onyekachi Adekoya, Provost Marshal, Association of Licensed Private Security Practitioners of Nigeria, Lagos Zone, will be speaking to us on police reform, matters arising, and the way forward.
We'll also catch up on news-making headlines around the globe. Our dependable Rotu Sudiri will be giving us Africa Business Update, while Michael Wilson will give us an update on global business outlook. Also, Adesu Amora will be updating us on COVID-19 pandemic around the world. We'll also review today's newspaper with our news analyst, Emmanuel Efeni, while Oji will fill us in with what's trending around the world. It's going to be all that and a whole lot more today on The Morning Show.
And Liberty.
It's a delight to have you back, still at Rise News Channel. It's time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We start in the United States, where President-elect Joe Biden has signaled his plans to move quickly to build out his government, focusing on the raging pandemic that will likely dominate the early days of his administration. Biden named the former Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, and a former Food and Drug Administration Commissioner, David Kessler, as co-chairs of a coronavirus group set to get started, with other members expected to be announced later today. Transition team officials said that this week Biden will launch his agency review teams. The group of transition staffers will also have key access to key agencies in current administration to ease the power transfer. The teams will collect and review information such as budgetary and staffing decisions, pending regulations, and other work in progress from the current staff at the department to help Biden's team prepare to transition. White House officials will not comment on whether they will cooperate with Biden's team on the review. It looks to me as though work has started. In fact, work has started. Power has shifted.
Yes, it has. You will notice that Joe Biden's website was updated, and he has such a comprehensive plan for coronavirus. He has 4 main areas, 4 priorities: coronavirus, economic recovery, race relations, of course. And it's so, and climate change, my favorite. And it's so detailed with regards to coronavirus. And it's striking to me, like one of the bullet points you have there, the pandemic help desk, where you can actually track infections in various areas. It was one of the criticisms of the Trump administration that when schools reopened and infections started rising, there was not adequate information about what those areas were. It was just a very blanket, just reopen sort of approach. But Biden has taken a more nuanced approach, calling the whole social distancing, reopening of the economy, a dial and not a switch. In some areas you dial down, in some areas you dial up. So a lot of thought has gone into it. There's even racial and ethnic approach to coronavirus in recognition of the fact that it affects black and other minority groups more than white. So a lot of thought has gone into it. So I'm quite happy about that. But I do wonder, with the kind of polarization that we're seeing in America, how will a nationwide mask mandate be received by Trump supporters who completely reject the idea of wearing a mask in spite of all the scientific evidence? I wonder if his efforts will be resisted. And obviously the things that need congressional approval as well, like the second stimulus check, which is still hanging. I wonder how that's going to go.
That'll be sorted out if the 2 Senate seats in Georgia comes the way of the Democrats.
In January.
In January.
Well, we hope.
So
well, I think, later on the program today, we'll probably be looking at lessons from what has happened in the United States. But what we have seen clearly is a president that is seizing the momentum right from the very beginning. When he gave his first speech as president-elect, it's noteworthy that he repeated his position about he being the president of all Americans, a president who is going to unite everybody. And he talked about possibilities, which was also a phrase that was repeated in the vice president-elect's speech about how America is truly a land of possibilities for everyone. And it will be interesting to see how, Joe Biden, Mr. Biden, provides leadership in that direction. You are right. Yes, he wants to hit the ground running with regard to coronavirus, which turned out to have also been, in a way, a major issue in that election. Climate change, yes. We're also likely to see him doing a lot in terms of immigration. All those countries that were stigmatized by President Trump, there's likely to be a reversal in that regard. There's also likely to be a lot of reversals in terms of the various divisive executive orders, the fascist executive orders that President Trump imposed on the United States. We're also likely to see under Mr. Biden a move towards multilateralism. He's going to, take another look at the agreement on climate change, the Paris agreement. He's going to change his mind, move away from President Trump's demonization of the World Health Organization and of the World Trade Organization. So we're looking towards a presidency that is likely to be more inclusive, more open, more mature, and it comes to the office with very high credentials. 47 years in politics, 8 years as vice president, over 30 years in Congress. So of course, that I believe that the American people have chosen well, and would like to congratulate Mr. Biden and Kamala Harris and the people of the United States. In turn, in spite of all our anxieties and fears that by this morning there will be violence on the streets of America, I think that Trump's supporters, they're beginning to get round to it. The big problem that we have remains President Trump, who has refused to accept the outcome of that election, who continues to refer to the media as, what does he call the media now? Limestream media. And he says that the election was stolen from him by thieves. Now, who are those thieves? He cannot refer to the people of America as thieves. They've decided, yes, he got about 70 million of the votes. And we said, yes, he has a very strong base. And Trumpism remains a factor for now in American politics. But over the weekend, I saw people saying that if President Trump does not want to leave the White House, the presidency, the White House will leave him, as it happened in March 1801 to John Adams, when the new president had to go and Abraham Lincoln, right? Had to do his inauguration in another venue, and Secret Service, everybody, they moved away. And then special congratulations to the vice president-elect, first African-American woman to be elected vice president, first Asian American woman to become vice president, highest-ranking female elected official in American history. And I've seen, Africans saying, in fact, we should also celebrate the fact that there is Nigerian DNA. In-law. She's also our in-law. So everybody is excited. And I think that all is well, that ends well. And you can see that the international community, world leaders, they've been congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So the world has moved on. I hope that President Trump will listen to his wife, Melania, and his son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner, and begin to pack his things out of the White House.
But Dr. Batsi, that Abe Lincoln reference made me slightly nervous because what happened in Abe Lincoln's presidency, we do not want to repeat it.
We don't want to repeat it.
Well,
that was the beginning of the Civil War, just 3 months. That was a very divided election.
It was.
But America will move forward. And what I've always appreciated about America as a country, and I pray that my country, Nigeria, gets there someday, is the strength of its institutions.
Yes.
It's not about the big man, but the strength of the institution of a country.
Trump has tested them all.
All. And I pray Nigeria gets there. I pray we have a strong institution in this country, viable institution that can stand on its own, irrespective of who is in power, really.
Awesome.
All right, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Michael, and Adesoa to give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. Pleasure having you back. Still the Rise News channel. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us Africa business update. Rotus, over to you.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tunde. Happy birthday, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, we're looking at the brewery sector, and particularly Kano State. So apparently, Kano State destroyed about 200 million naira worth of alcoholic goods. You're seeing images of that right now. The Kano State Twitter handle actually retweeted a Twitter handle, Giddy Traffic, that actually posts a lot of news. They retweeted it on their handle, essentially confirming that they destroyed all these bottles of alcoholic goods. And the reason why is because of the Hisbah police. The Hisbah police have been, and there's, you can see the logo there on the badge of one of the members of the Hisbah police. They essentially say Kano State Hisbah are essentially there to reinforce the fact that due to Sharia law, alcoholic consumption is not allowed. But from a revenue perspective, if you look at things, this is a bit counterintuitive. Look at this here. This is the brewery's contribution to VAT. You're looking at the cumulative Q1 to Q3. If you look at the bottom right of the screen, the brewery's bottling and beverages industry contributed 40 billion naira cumulatively from Q1 to Q3. In just Q3 alone, they contributed 15.8 billion naira. This is from the Bureau of Statistics. So that's how much they contributed. Let's look at Kano State's IGR now. Okay, rather, sorry, this is the growth rates. This is the growth rates of the contributions to VAT from the brewery sector. 27.5% growth rates year-to-date Q1 to Q3 if you compare to 2019. 51% growth rates Q3 2020 compared to Q2. That's quarter-on-quarter growth. And then 62% growth rate, the third figure on your right-hand side, Q3 2020 compared to the third quarter of 2019. So the amount that the brewery sector has been contributing to value-added tax has been growing. We'll continue. You look at Kano State's IGR now, it's highlighted there. For 2019, internally generated revenue for Kano was just 40 billion naira. Again, compare that to what that's essentially in the entire fiscal year 2019 is equal to what the brewery sector contributed to VAT in just three quarters. Now, a healthy amount of this figure is from FAC allocations. It's not even actual internally generated revenue. But let's keep going. If you look at the cumulative contribution, these are the top sectors, top 5 sectors that contributed to VAT collection over the first 3 quarters of the year. Professional services brought in 119 billion naira. Other manufacturing brought in 114. Commercial and trading brought in 52.2. Then you see the brewery sector there, 40.6 billion. We already saw that figure. And then transport and haulage. If you take a look now on a quarterly basis, this again is the first 3 quarters cumulative. We move on to the next slide here and take a look at on a quarterly basis. Okay, actually, no, we're going to look at Kano State's IGR now. So this is internally generated revenue for the half year 2020, the first 6 months of the year. If you look at the highlighted figure on the left, FAC H1 2020, 38 billion of the revenue that was contributed to Kano State for the first 6 months of this year came in from FAC. Actual IGR was just 17 billion. If you look at the 2 circled figures below, 68% of Kano's IGR came from FAC allocations, right? Only 31% for the first half of this year was from actual revenue that Kano State generated. We keep going and look at the next slide here. When you actually look at the September FAC allocations, right? The gross contributions to Kano State. Again, this is just looking at September alone. was 5.3 billion naira. That is how much they got from FAC. Again, this is distributed through the 3 tiers of government: federal, state, and local governments. We move on to the next slide here. Look at that figure on the right. Gross VAT allocation, 2.6 billion naira is what Kano State got. So essentially, Kano State has destroyed goods from a sector that contributes in VAT to their revenue. So, you know, we had a conversation in the past about the competitiveness of the states, Lagos State versus other states. The CEOs of each of these states, Governor Abdullahi Ganduje is the CEO of, essentially, of Kano State. He has to now think about what the brewery sector contributes in terms of jobs, what it contributes in terms of taxes and revenue, and what it essentially gives his state in terms of IGR. Interestingly enough, just yesterday or the day before, Bloomberg was reporting that the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, is thinking about decriminalizing alcohol consumption and cohabitation. Essentially, people, unmarried couples getting hitched, essentially, because they want to be able to bring in more investment into the UAE. The UAE is made up mostly of, as far as its working population, its labor force, a lot of expatriates in the oil and gas sector, manufacturing, financial services. So they are looking at decriminalizing alcohol consumption and cohabitation in order to bring in more investment and more expatriates. So, look, when you think about the revenue makeup of the different states here, restructuring all these conversations, what Kano State has done here is a bit counterintuitive from a revenue standpoint.
Okay, Rotus, I mean, I just remember very clearly the words of Ben-Gurion, Prime Minister of Israel, at a point, when it was said that Israel shouldn't trade with Arab nations around it. And he said, business is business, Israel is Israel. And that's very apt for this. We must need to draw a line between religion and business. The UAE, let's not forget, comes from a big religious family, you know, Muslim religious family. 2 families rule the Arab Emirates, the Al Thanis and the Al Maktoums that are there. These are religious families, and the Saudis too, they are Sauds. These are families. They have their religious inclinations, but when they look at the business dynamics, they said this is something we have to do. I think you've made a very clear point yourself. Kano should please learn from what the UAE is doing. You are destroying people's property, you are destroying alcohol, you are destroying what is giving you revenue because it's not tandem to your religion. I'm not saying don't have your religion, but look at the economic implications. And most importantly, Rotus, I want to ask a question. Who pays for those bottles of alcohol that has been destroyed? Because that's somebody's trade. That's somebody's investment. They've put a lot of things to produce those bottles worth over 200 million naira. Who pays for it in the end?
To add to that, I want to talk about the importance of harmonious cohabitation in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. Right. It's in this district called Sabongari that this was done. I think it's actually criminals, vandalism, quite frankly. And there are people who live there that are Christian. Surah Al-Baqarah in the Quran will say there's no compulsion in religion. You cannot force anybody to be a Muslim. It's in the Quran. So there's no need to vandalize people's property in the name of, you know, enforcing your own religion onto somebody else. It's just unfortunate.
Well, we're dealing with a combination of hypocrisy and bigotry. And it's very unfortunate that, you know, in some states of the Federation, in the northern part, where, you know, the Sharia seems to be in place, people interpret the Sharia, which is a personal orthodoxy, in a way that infringes on the fundamental rights of persons who have not elected to be governed by the principles or rules of Sharia. Now, in this particular case, we're told that the Hizbah police exist to ensure that people do not consume alcohol, which we're told can affect the reasoning capacity of people who consume alcohol. But we've also seen that, you know, that may not be scientifically proven. The state government also says that it got a court order to destroy those 1.975 million and 20 trucks of alcohol. Well, I hope that the owners of those, you know, trucks and of the content would seek to push for their rights in court. Because here you are dealing with the right to do business, the right to make your own choice, the right to go to heaven the way you prefer. So what we see here, you know, and it's good you cited the example of the United Arab Emirates. Sometimes we tend to be too zealous in the way we approach certain things. And so many stories coming out of Kano about, what the ISBA police has been doing. But basically infringement on other people's rights. I do not think that that is good in a democracy where people have the right to do certain things under the Constitution. Whatever the enabling law of the ISBA police is, it cannot be superior to the Nigerian Constitution.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Rotus. I mean, so many bullets being fired out of the ISBA police. Dr. Bati, no pun intended. All right. Moving on. For more business, Michael Wilson joins us now from London.
Very good morning and a big happy birthday, Dr. I. You're looking very good for your 21st, I have to say.
Thank you. Good morning.
Right, so the week, this is going to be the week of the Biden afterglow or hangover, depending on which side of the political fence you actually stand. Financial markets have actually survived. More importantly, the U.S. Stalemate in the U.S. Senate. We'll come on to that later on because I think it's probably about the most important thing. So Wall Street had loaded up a Biden victory. Asset price rally of last week actually continuing in Asia this morning. There may be some. Biden is perceived as being quite friendly towards Asia, and he might re-engage in international trade. Who knows? And there may be some sort of dialing down of the geopolitical tensions with China. Although I think that the United States and China headbutting, if you like, each other is probably written into the new normal. As for China, it released its October balance of trade over the weekend on Saturday. Again, imports not rising that much, exports doing extremely well. It may be the fact that the imports and domestic consumption not doing so well because of the long holiday that they had, which we reported on earlier. We'll see how it goes. Now, Japan, the Tankan survey, still negative at 13 as opposed to minus 26. But as it is in Japan, any negative that's not too negative is seen as positive, if you get where I'm coming from. But shares in Tokyo hit a 30-year high on Monday after on the first day of trading after Biden's victory. The Nikkei up 2.5%. That's the highest it's been since 1991. Australia doing reasonably well. Malaysia's budget was well received on Friday. The government appears to have a government still, which is good news for Malaysia. US index futures are higher today. And I suspect we'll probably see more record highs as Wall Street gets into action today. And across Asia, really, not too bad. And that shenanigans about Ant Financial and the fact that the Chinese authorities stomped on its IPO appears to have been forgotten in Hong Kong. So then, as far as last week is concerned, and these are a little hidden by all the election news, US non-farm payrolls rose by 638,000 jobs. And although those numbers hid a lot of federal state government hiring, unemployment fell to 6.9%. But do bear this in mind. We know what we think about polls now, don't we? I hope we do. And the selection of this is only from 60,000 people. So I think that still we have to take those figures with a degree, with a pinch of salt, if you like. But the critical takeaway, I think, from last week was not so much the election, but more the comments from the US Republican and newly re-elected Senate leader Mitch McConnell. And he poured water on the fact that the United States needs a big stimulus package. Again, and only, I think, a double-dip recession would actually get that going. The blue wave and so on, all very well, but the Senate and House elections will yet come back to haunt them, I feel. So I don't think we're going to see a great deal of help from America coming from a stimulus package anytime soon. UK-EU trade talks continue this week. Things looking a bit more optimistic, but still competition rules and fishing rights. These are the big things which still need to be sorted out. I don't see much happening about that. European markets looking actually quite good this Monday morning, opening up because of what happened over the weekend and the US election. Commodities, well, oil prices did rally. I noticed some of the headlines are saying that oil prices actually surged. Well, I think you need to be very careful about that because they've only moved to the middle of their range of their trading range. And actually, any sign of crimping economies will push that price down again. And gold as well, a similar kind of thing. It's riding high on the Biden call, and it's not, rather ominously, reflecting the rise in equities. It just tends to be that when equities fall, then everybody starts to get a bit scared and everything looks a bit risky, then they go to gold. That isn't happening right now. I suspect it's a bit of a false dawn as far as that's concerned. That is the global view for the beginning of your week. And once again, very happy birthday to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Michael. Well, quickly, I would like to ask you, Biden has now emerged as president-elect. Would that be good or bad for post-Brexit Britain and for Europe, considering the fact that you recall Mr. Biden was critical of Brexit?
I think that the next few months the next month is going to be very critical. Biden, as far as we can tell from what he said, and he hasn't said a great deal in the past, is that he regards the whole business about Brexit as being a bit Trumpian. And also, he is a great friend of Barack Obama, as you know, Biden is. And Obama stuck us right to the back of the queue as far as trade is concerned. So that doesn't look very good. I think it'll be quite a testing time. We were laughing about a cartoon over the weekend that showed somebody picking up a phone in the White House saying, excuse me, Mr. President-elect, there's a Mr. Boris Johnson on the phone. Would you like to take the call? And he's saying, not really. But, you know, I feel as though it's going to be difficult. There are 5 things he needs to get to grips with if this helps as the sort of global view of things. 1, the stimulus. 2, inequality. Wage inequality in the United States is the highest it's been for 15 years. Climate change, is he going to join in on that? That's something he might want to hold hands with. Remember, the UK hosts this big climate change conference in Glasgow later next year. Trade, will he end? And I'm not just talking about trade with the UK, but trade internationally. What's he going to do about that? And I think also, here's the big one. What's he going to do about big tech in the United States? Now, we've run over these arguments about whether big tech's a good or a bad idea over these months, you know, day after day and all the rest of it. The fact of the matter is the Biden campaign got a lot of support from Silicon Valley. So I think he'd have to be quite brave to start taking apart the big tech companies. But who knows? A lot of work to be done. Apparently, he's ripping up the Trump rule book, which can't be a bad thing.
Well, to add to that, Joe Biden also called Boris Johnson a physical and emotional clone of Donald Trump. Oh, yeah. I don't think he meant that as a compliment.
Oh, yeah. I mean that's quite very spot on. I just want to talk about, I want to talk about this on Friday, but there was no time, Ant Financial and China. One would have thought that the Chinese authority will allow the IPO of Ant Financial to go through because Jack Ma still pretty much serves the dealings of the great party in China, the Communist Party. But why are they clamping down on this? I mean, the Communist Party have helped other companies like Huawei and the likes. Why have they clamped down on Jack Ma particularly, even if we have seen leaks that says Jack Ma is a member of the Communist Party?
Yeah, the Chinese authorities clamped down on Jack Ma this time around because Ant Financial is a sort of baby of a project he had many years ago when he wanted his particular financial pay in the payment infrastructure. He wanted that to become as big as he put it, the People's Bank of China, and the Chinese authorities did not like that. So therefore, he was brought up. He thought he was just going to get a smack on the wrist, but the Chinese authorities said, "No, is this a tech company or is this a banking company?" And I'm imagining this because we hear nothing from China. I mean, we get the news reports and so on, but state media has been very, very, very opaque about this, just as it was on the US elections. But what I think's happened is the Chinese authorities have said to Jack Ma, "No, we don't mind Alibaba, we don't mind that, but what we do not want is a direct rival to the People's Bank of China." And you can understand that in lots of ways because that's how the communists actually control their economy there. So that's why I think they clapped down on Jack Ma. He had a bad week last week.
All right, thank you so much for that. We'll go to COVID-19 pandemic update with Adeso Omaro. Adeso, anything on the vaccines?
Well, good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Dr. Abati, and good morning to you. We are all anxiously but cautiously waiting for a vaccine. As you know, the race is on. We have at least 4 in their final stages, 10 major ones in critical stages as well. But as soon as we have one, I'll be glad to break the news to you, Rufai. But let's look at the global figures this morning. Unfortunately, coronavirus has hit another sobering milestone. More than 50 million positive cases worldwide since the pandemic began. According to the Johns Hopkins University Life Tracker, which you see on your screen, it shows that the US, India, and Brazil have the highest figures, and also there have been more than 1.2 million deaths from the disease worldwide as well since the pandemic started. 50.4 million cases and counting, 1.256 million deaths. Now, away from those figures, he's no doubt a comforter-in-chief, an advocate for unity, but with over 10 million cases reported, and that's almost a fifth of all reported global cases. Can Joe Biden turn the coronavirus pandemic in America around as the president-elect? Well, you remember that in the build-up to the election, President-elect, then candidate Joe Biden made criticism of President Trump's handling of the pandemic a centerpiece of his campaign. And as the coronavirus infections are breaking records day after day in the country with deaths rising, the president-elect in his victory speech on Saturday announced that he says he would be announcing a COVID-19 task force today. All eyes are on that. Already we have a hint of some people making the 12-member task force. But also, there is a Biden-Harris administration 7-point plan to beat COVID-19, including ensuring free, reliable testing for all Americans, a better personal protective equipment, amongst others. This can be found on the website buildbackbetter.com. Now, with such plans in place, he leaves no doubt that the virus is a priority. But America is a truly divided country at the moment, with an incumbent yet to concede, and with his massive supporters who, like him, ignore the sciences. I think the biggest challenge for the Biden administration will be to get people to follow recommendations to turn the pandemic around in the country. And away from there to Africa. Now, recently, health authorities on the continent have been expressing concerns of a possible second wave of the virus in Africa. And here in Nigeria, the country has recorded 300 cases yesterday, bringing the total to 60,090 cases. The last time the country recorded this number of virus cases, I had to dig. It was 2 months ago, to be precise, on the 8th of September, and the tally then was 296 infections. I must quickly add, it is unclear what we are experiencing because there's been a consistent decline in cases as a result of low testing. So it is difficult to say if this is a second wave or it is a spike in the first wave. In Nigeria, the state governments are responsible for sample collection and testing, but like we all know, they have been falling behind. So we actually cannot say what exactly this is all about. And Nigeria has only conducted just below 700 samples nationwide since the pandemic began. Away from Nigeria, days after Danish health authorities reported a new coronavirus strain that can now move from mink to humans, the UK government has now banned all non-UK travelers into the country, especially those coming from Denmark. But we'll have to, those who are from UK can return, but will have to isolate with the rest of their families for 14 days. Passenger planes and ships traveling from Denmark are also carrying freight would also not be allowed to dock. And the European low-cost airline Ryanair has described it as a bizarre and baseless move. The Denmark Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Kofod, also calls this restriction announcement a very drastic step. And finally, guys, pictures of the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, adorned in a face mask in public for the first time, was released on Saturday. According to the Buckingham Palace, it was the ceremony marking the centenary of the burial of the unknown warrior at Westminster Abbey on Wednesday. Now, the 94-year-old monarch has been seen in public on several occasions over the past few months, but never in a face mask, even though the royal family has been hit directly by the pandemic, with the first and second in line to the throne, Prince Charles and Prince William, respectively, testing positive for COVID-19.
Well, Adesua, first, with regard to the Queen, well, isn't that a perfect example of leadership by example, which we often talk about? The United Kingdom is under what they call lockdown 2.0. And, you know, part of it is that you must wear masks compulsorily. And to see the monarch, the Queen herself, you know, wearing the mask, it's a message to everyone that, look, coronavirus is no respecter of persons, whether you are queen or king or an ordinary citizen. But on Mr. Biden hitting the ground running, again, this is a very important lesson for us in Africa. During elections in Africa, many of our leaders, they make a lot of promises. When they get to office, in fact, they will tell you they never made such promises. But here you've seen right from day one, a president-elect already addressing those issues with which he engaged the American public. And that's an indication that, look, this is a clear-headed program of action that intends to embark upon. Today, we expect Mr. Biden to announce a 12-man task force led by scientists and experts. Already has selected 3 persons who will co-chair that coronavirus task force. And he says this will be driven by science. So we're not likely to have a President Biden who will be, you know, talking against science. You know, he will allow the process to be science-driven. Earlier on, when I was commenting on President Trump refusing to leave, I said in March 1801, we had the example of John Adams, second president, who refused to leave, and the White House had to leave him. But the contender in the 1800 election was not Lincoln, it was Thomas Jefferson. It was Thomas Jefferson who was sworn in to succeed John Adams in 1801.
So all I have to say about Biden's plan is just the thoughts that went into it. And same as with climate change, Biden does not completely dismiss scientists as some kind of heretic, which is so refreshing after 4 years of Donald Trump. But the most striking part of Biden's plan is that he's already looking forward to the next pandemic, which we all know is inevitable, unfortunately. And we all know the world was caught napping with coronavirus, that woeful shortage of PPE, for just one example. So they're going to be tracking any kind of potential outbreak to ensure that we do not get this kind of tragic figures. Because Adeswa, every day you come and report on coronavirus update, and the numbers keep going higher and higher all over the world. It's actually really frightening. January 1st, 2020, who would have thought?
Who would have thought? I just want to ask a question, and I think the NCDC needs to answer the question. What has happened? Why did the cases just surge all of a sudden in Lagos? Is it that the second wave has happened? Is it that they are testing more now? What has happened? I want us to interrogate those numbers even more.
Okay, very quickly, the numbers coming in from Lagos for yesterday, the NCDC indicated that that's accumulation of 2 days put together. We don't know why that happened. But again, Rufai, it's across the country, it's not just Lagos. Low testing, the NCDC has been hammering on this. Again, there's a lot of focus on the federal government, as we do a lot of things in Nigeria. But when it comes to coronavirus, the state governments are in charge, and they have also received some financial aid to help them carry out this duty. But, you know, they still fall behind.
Definitely. All right. Thank you so much for that.